Hello. Today we're going to read chapter 19 of The Orphan of Ellis Island. Salvador's voice was the last thing Dominic heard before falling asleep that night. It was the first thing that he heard the next morning, too. But this time Salvador wasn't singing. He was groaning. "Oh, my stomach, it hurts," he cried. Dominic sat up to find Salvador doubled over in pain, clutching his belly. "I told you not to swallow those cherry pits yesterday," Francisco scolded. "Antonio, what are you doing?" he called. Antonio had knelt beside Salvador and was trying to look up his nose. "I think I see this tree starting to grow now," Antonio said. While Dominic and Francisco laughed, Salvador groaned and pushed Antonio away. "Are you feeling good enough to walk?" Francisco asked, putting his arm out on his brother's shoulder. "We must reach the city today." Salvador's face was white. He bit down on his lower lip in a quell of pain, but he insisted he could walk. They were still over an hour away from the harbor. It was an easy walk, going down a well-worn path, but they had to stop several times for Salvador when he doubled over in pain. Francisco frowned. "It's not good to travel with a sour stomach," he said. I can make it, Salvador insisted. Dominic and Francisco took turns helping him walk. They continued down until they finally reached the cobblestone streets of the city. Dominic was glad to be off the stony hillside. He was not used to walking barefoot, and his tender feet were now quite bruised. Suddenly, the little group found themselves walking into a fantasia of color, voices, and music. "Oh, see Naples, and then die," Francisco whispered. "What are you talking about?" Dominic asked, nervously. "It's an old saying," Francisco explained. "They say that you haven't lived until you've seen this city." "I just hope I can find the way to stay alive in this city," Dominic thought. He stared at the women in long skirts and the men in cloth caps as they swarmed along the side streets, climbing toward higher quarters of the city. Fountains gurgled and babies cried and young girls hung over the balconies singing to passers-by below. All the activity reminded him of the hustle and bustle of the streets back home in Brooklyn, but the look and the smell of this place was quite different. Great domed buildings with ornate stone carvings rose up above the terracotta-colored roofs. The strong scent of ripe hay and manure was thick in the sea air, along with the pungent aroma of seaweed and fish. Shifty-eyed conmen stood in the street corners, hawking the goods to the weary immigrants that were about to embark. "Teeth pulled!" one shouted, grabbing hold of Dominic's arm. "Don't go on a voyage with a mouthful of rotten teeth!" Dominic squirmed his way out of the man's grip and broke into a run to catch up with Francisco and the others. "Authentic American shirts," wailed another after them. "Don't arrive in America looking like a greenhorn." "Relics for the saint to calm an angry ocean," promised another. "Hair from the head of St. Christopher, guaranteed for a safe journey." "We have no money," Francisco told them. "Only our tickets." "Why did you tell them that?" Dominic said frantically to Francisco. "You never tell someone on the streets what you've got on you." But Francisco didn't seem to understand, and Dominic soon realized that coming from a little mountain village, Francisco was not as street smart as a person coming from a place like Brooklyn. Dominic felt something brush against his sleeve, and he turned to see a grim-faced boy, younger than himself, trying to pick his pocket. He pushed him away, and then another small boy slipped his hand into Francisco's backpack. "Hey!" Francisco yelled. "Stop! He's stolen our shoes!" We will read chapter